He just glared at me. They usually don't believe you until the first nail comes out. I popped out my knife and cut off part of his sleeve and rolled it into a ball. Then I put the knife away and pulled out my Leatherman tool and unfolded the pliers. Leatherman makes a really quality product, and I had carried this pair in Iraq and Syria. I hated to get blood all over them, but they do wash up. I held it up in front of his face. Okay, Jimmy, time to go. Who hired you to watch the hospital? And what were your instructions? He still just looked at me. I wiggled the pliers a little. You sure? Once the cloth goes in, the nail comes off. I won't stop halfway through. Last chance. I jammed the cloth in his mouth and wrapped him up in a body lock. I had his hand zipped in front, so it was simple enough to get the pliers under the pinky nail on the left hand and begin pulling. Despite what you might think, nails don't just pop off. It took some twisting and pulling, not to mention digging the plier tip in under the nail before I was able to rip it off. He damned near bucked me off a couple of times, but I had him down good. When I was finished, I ripped the cloth out of his mouth and wrapped it around the finger to stop the bleeding. He was swearing and cursing, but his face looked a little pale. I gave him a couple minutes to swear at me. Didn't take it personally. Then started talking. Jimmy, here's the deal. Maybe you didn't believe me. Or maybe you didn't know what it was like. But now you know. I will do this. You have 9 more nails. And if you aren't talking by, then I will probably start with the fingers, one joint at a time. At the moment, I'm not very annoyed with you, but I don't have all day to spend here. So if this keeps going too much longer, I might just start to get pissed at you. And that would be bad for you. If you want to walk out of here crippled for life, that's fine with me. But you will talk sooner or later, so make it easy on yourself and save yourself some pain. Part of it was bullshit, but part of it was true. Jimmy was just a low-level thug, and I really didn't want to cripple him if I didn't have to. But he was going to talk, sooner or later. Who hired you to watch the hospital? And what were your instructions? He just looked at me. Do you really want me to put the cloth back in and go for nail number 2? No. God, he was a sullen jerk now that he decided to talk. I mean, we were both just playing our parts, and he was getting bent out of shape over a broken nail. It wasn't personal. Who hired you to watch the hospital? Thompson Protective Services. They have an office down on 4th Street. And what were your instructions? Just watch the hospital room occasionally to see if she woke up. And see if anyone was spending time with her. Did they tell you to follow me? Sort of. When I told them, that you had been there last night, they said if you showed up again to find out who you were. I couldn't find anything out at the hospital, so I figured this would be the best way. I asked a few more questions, but he really didn't know anything. I kept the phone just for fun. Figured I could strip it tonight for any intel. I ejected the magazine from the gun and emptied it, then stripped off the slide and put the parts down next to him. In a minute, I am going to cut you loose. If you walk back to the hospital, they can patch you up, or you can do it yourself. Tell them you got your nail caught in a door. Simple enough. Like I said, I am not annoyed with you yet. But if I see you again, I might become so. If I do, I will make today look like a walk in the park, and you will not survive it. So, your safest course is to stay as far away from me as you can. Fuck you, asshole. As soon. My gun was in my hand and partway down his throat before he got another word out. I think part of some teeth might have gone down there as well. You sounded like you were going to threaten me. If you threaten me, I will kill you. If I see you again, I will kill you. If I smell you again, I will kill you. And at the moment, your smell is a little strong. In fact, if you in any way cause me to think of you again, I will kill you. Call your boss. Tell him what happened. Let him know I will be calling on him. Then leave town for a few weeks. It will all be over by then. Sometimes the best way to save a life is let them know how easy it would be to lose it. I pulled the gun out of his mouth and told him to shut his eyes. Then I cut the zip ties free. Count to 100 before you open your eyes. Remember what I said, and you can live. Sometimes the best way to save a life is let them know how easy it would be to lose it. I pulled the gun out of his mouth and told him to shut his eyes. Then I cut the zip ties free. Count to 100 before you open your eyes. Remember what I said, and you can live. I left him in the alley and went back to the hospital and sat with her for a few hours. She didn't move or wake up. Then I went to the hotel to clean up and eat dinner. They had a decent restaurant off the lobby, and I had prime rib and rock lobster tail. A bit traditional, but I was sick of exotic foods. I spent the evening doing research and making phone calls. Thompson Protective Services was one of the multitude of private protection groups that catered to the Hollywood elite. They did some federal work, not a lot, but enough I could apply some pressure if needed. They also did some with the locals. After all, assault was a local matter, and I doubted they would want their involvement broadcast. I had a good night's sleep. I hit Thompson's about 10:30 the next morning. I had breakfast via room service first. After 3 months of goating, it was just this side of heaven. So I was enjoying it while I could. Bacon, eggs, hash browns, toast, real coffee, even tomato juice with lemon. I left the room feeling far better than I should have. They were on the 4th floor of a fairly new office building. The protection racket must pay pretty well. The office doors were glass, and the waiting room was all chrome glass, and vinyl. Modern always left me cold. I guess I was a traditionalist when it came to furnishings, but I liked mahogany and leather and comfort, and not something that looked like the inside of a refrigerator. There was a long reception desk, along one wall facing the doors, and they had one of those wall-mounted water things behind it, so it looked like water was running down the wall. There were two pretty girls behind the desk, a blonde and an Oriental. You could see their legs underneath, short skirts, and stockings. They had nice legs. Can I help you, sir? Asked the blonde. I gave her one of my better smiles. I have been told that my smile resembles a shark getting ready to attack, but I thought it was charming. I would like to see Mr. Thompson. Is he available this morning? Do you have an appointment? You know, I'm not sure. I had asked Jimmy Wallace to set something up for me yesterday, but I don't know if he did. Perhaps you could ask Mr. Thompson and see if you can see me. Tell him I am the one that met with Jimmy yesterday. I can wait over there. It was about 15 minutes before they sent someone out to get me. I think he was supposed to be big and intimidating, but all he really managed to pull off to me was big. Going down the hallway, he stopped for a minute and put his hand on my chest. Jimmy was a friend of mine. Don't think we're going to forget what you did to him. I never liked having hands on me, as you never know where those hands have been. So I broke his wrist. I felt and heard it break, but before he had registered it, I had moved back and put my gun to his temple. Jimmy and I have a deal. He stays away for a few weeks, and I don't kill him. He doesn't talk to me again, and I don't kill him. I don't need to think about him again, and I don't kill him. It's a good deal, so don't fuck it up for him. Now, show me to your boss's office, and you can go get your wrist set. I put the gun away. Thompson was a big man. Also, not as big as the bouncers he had working for him, but large, and he had another one of them there with him that actually looked a little more capable than the two I had met so far. Who the fuck are you? Smith. John Smith. Before we start, can you have someone run your boy here to the hospital? We had an accident in the hallway, and his wrist needs to be set. I took a seat across from him, grinning slightly, but more along the side wall. Not that I didn't trust them. Well, actually, I didn't. But I didn't want my back to a door, and I didn't want anyone behind me either. I gave them a few minutes to sort out Jimmy's friend. Okay, Mr. Smith, you have the floor. What the fuck do you want? Simple. I want to know who hired you to put surveillance on the hooker in the hospital. I'm not telling you shit. Why don't you tell me who the fuck you really are? I swear I must have been living in a bad movie script or some really crappy internet story made up by someone who doesn't know how to write. They all follow the same line, and they all end up talking, sooner or later. You look smarter than Jimmy, so I was hoping to do this one the easy way. You will talk to me. Everyone does. It is just a matter of time. You tell me who your client is. I leave you alone. You hold out on me, I make you hurt. I don't want to make you hurt, I don't enjoy it. You lie to me. I kill you. So far, your staff hasn't impressed me all that much, so I don't see you stopping me. This one looks a little more competent than the other two, but I'm fairly sure I can take him out and put you down before that 45 in his waistband clears the leather. But then again, the hurt I put on Jimmy was different. Yours would be more painful and longer lasting. You have more to lose. And what if we take you down first? Then you explain why you have a dead federal agent in your office, why you are impeding a national security investigation, and then get ready for the shitstorm that will descend on your head. At a minimum, you lose all government contracts you have now, and any in the future, and any cooperation you may have had with the local authorities. Your private contracts also dry up because nobody will touch you. But I don't think they will stop with the minimum. I could see the wheels spinning in. It wasn't a pretty sight. You really, a Fed, maybe have some sort of identification? Not that I want to share with you, or for that matter, that you want to see. The less you know, the better for you. Do you know Detective Decker down at Metro North? He nodded. Go call him. Tell him what case I'm asking about and see if he wants you to help me. Go ahead. I will wait in here. He didn't like being dismissed from his office, but he got up and walked to the door, his shadow a step or two behind him. I waited until he was almost out. Thompson, I said when he almost reached the door and he looked back, I could use a cup of coffee while I'm waiting. Black, no sugar. He was swearing on the way out, but about 5 minutes later, the Oriental girl brought a cup in. It was good coffee, black and hot, just a little weak, and I enjoyed watching her ass twitch as she walked away. He was back in about 20 minutes, alone. What did Decker tell you? He doesn't like you, thinks you're an asshole, but he strongly recommended I tell you whatever you want to know. He gave me the impression that if I didn't even leaving, the country wouldn't help me. He seems to think you would find me wherever I went. And when he did find me, it would be bad. He also said he is out of this one. It is above his pay grade. So I am essentially on my own. So, what do you want to know? Who hired you and what were your instructions? The actual person that hired me is Jeffrey Parker. He is head of security for a local investment firm, RBA Securities, that invests money from Silicon Valley in the Philippines. They package together the money from the rich techs upstate and provide private backing for the movies the studios are raising money for. In addition, they often arrange parties and other events so the two sides can meet, especially the prospective actresses. This isn't a cheap operation, though. Last year alone, they processed through over $3 billion in funding. What did he hire you to do? Just watch the hooker in the hospital. Let him know if anyone comes to visit her, and who they are. Tell him if she wakes up. Why you? Look, we mainly do event security, VIP security, that type of thing. We have provided security for many of their events and a few of their clients over the years. We are discreet. We tend to look the other way for the most part. If someone wants to snort something or hire a few hookers, we don't blab about it. I assume he just wanted someone discreet to watch her. See who contacted her, but I didn't ask why. His own security operation is small. It mainly exists just to coordinate with others, so he needs to farm out work. I think he has a guy or two working for him. But that's about it. So, would looking the other way include watching a hooker being beat into a coma or dropping off her body? No. There are lines we don't cross. We don't say anything if they want to do drugs or hire hookers. But we don't provide them. If I catch any of my guys doing either, they are gone. We may get physical if the job demands it, but we don't beat innocent people for fun or profit. And we wouldn't stand by and watch a girl being beaten half to death. None of my guys had anything to do with this one. I fought it over. I think he'd been straight with me, so I was going to be straight with him. Jimmy's on vacation for a few weeks, more for his own protection than mine. I didn't want him doing something stupid, requiring me to kill him. You're out of this one also. Call this Parker fellow. Tell him you're done with him. For good. You can tell him as little or as much about me as you want to. It doesn't matter. He won't be around long anyway. Don't provide security for him. For anything. If you do, you will lose people. Just walk away. That's it. Or even? I considered him for a minute. As long as you told me the truth, I don't see a need to go further. If any of my friends ask me, I will tell them you were helpful. If you have any more Ginny's friends around, talk to them so they don't do anything stupid. So far, I have been nice, but if I run into any of your people, I will stop being nice. Understood. Got you. If you run into any of my people, they won't be working for me any longer. And I will make sure they know that. Personally, I want to keep as far away from you as I can. I actually understood what he meant, as there were times I didn't want to be near myself all that much either. I showed myself out. Parker had a nice apartment on South Hill. I had my security jammer going, so no video cameras picked me up as I entered around 22 hours. I did a quick walk through. The apartment was empty. I checked the closets. The only clothes were male, so either he lived alone or his partner was male also. I later determined I was correct on both counts. I found a nice comfortable chair in a dark corner and waited. I was good with waiting in the dark and waiting in general. Once in Lebanon, I had waited 3 days to get a shot off on a high-ranking member of Hezbollah. 3 days in a cramped, smelly crawl space above some burned-out apartments. But the target arrived, and I put him down with one shot from 1,600 meters. They came in around 2 o'clock. They were both half drunk, and the partner was giggling as they raced to the bedroom, stripped off, and jumped in bed. I let them grunt and groan for an hour or so until they both dropped off to sleep, then went in to check on them. Both were sprawled naked on the bed. Parker was in his mid-30s, but the partner barely looked 18. Probably some boy toy he had picked up for the night. The kid was lying ass up on the bed with his legs apart and cum leaking out of his asshole. So it was a quick matter to jab the needle in the fleshy part of his ass and give him a full dose. We use a combination of drugs that resemble a Ruthie. So any blood test would show a regular date rape drug. I gave him enough to keep him out for 8 hours, or maybe longer. I grabbed Parker by the hair and dropped him to the floor. The impact woke him up, but I helped it, along with a couple of kicks to the gut. He started coughing and then puked on the floor. For the head of security, he was soft. He probably rarely got his hands dirty. We need to talk. Who the fuck are you? What do you want? He had a whiny, nasally voice. And this was just getting better and better. Sniff. John Sniff. You the one that put the scare into Thompson? I can't believe that asshole sold me out. I had a nice chat with Mr. Thompson. I guess he decided some things aren't worth dying over. He suggested you might be able to answer some questions for me. I'm not telling you shit. You can't scare me like you did the others. Just get the fuck out before I have your ass handed to you on a platter. I have connections in this town. Like I said, I must have been stuck in a bad movie script. They all seem to be repeating the same tired cliches over and over. But had it really come to this, being threaded by a greasy, naked faggot, sprawled in his own puke on the floor? I grabbed him by the hair again and jerked him to a sitting position, put my face inches away from his, and spoke right in his eyes. I don't come from this town. No one you know, no connection you have, is going to go anywhere near this one. Your one chance to walk away from this is to cooperate. And if you don't do that, you will spend the rest of your life in federal prison, being raped by your cellmates. He wasn't going to prison, but I didn't need to tell him that. Depending on what he told me, I doubted he was walking out of here. What kind of deal are you offering? You tell me the truth, and you won't see the inside of a prison. Now, why were you having the girl watched? We wanted to know if she woke up. We wanted to know if she remembered what happened to her. Do you know what happened to her? Yes. What were you going to do if she woke up and remembered? We didn't know. Probably try to pay her off to be quiet. She's a smart girl. I think she would have gone for the money over revenge. And if she didn't, we hadn't decided. We had never faced a situation like this. Things had just spiraled out of control. Why don't you tell me the whole story? Start from the beginning. We were having a party for some moody people and money men from the valley. We were working on a deal to finance a new action film, and we had a few of the working girls there. Brad Jones was there, The one that did all the actions films back in the 90s. And he had slipped off into one of the upstairs rooms with the hooker for a quick blowjob when his wife walked in on them. To say she was pissed was an understatement. The rooms were equipped for fun and games, so she grabbed a big strap-on and went after the girl. The two fought for a minute, but I held her down and helped her strip her. I didn't think she would hurt her too much, but she really pounded into her, front and back. Brad just sat there watching. I think he was getting off on it, but it didn't do anything for me. When she started bleeding, I convinced her to stop and hustled them both out the door. Then I wiped the girl down with some alcohol wipes and put some clothes on her and took her out to drive her home. We were walking across the parking lot when out of nowhere, this Escalade came up and smashed into her. It then turned around and took another run at her, running over her arm before speeding off. Brad was in the passenger seat, and his wife was driving. When I got to the girl, she was out cold, so I put her in my trunk, drove down towards the scoozier part of town, and dropped her off in an alley. When the cops found her, we decided to put the surveillance on her, thinking if she woke up, we could buy her off. If she didn't wake up, it was just as well. So there it was. Just a hazard of her work, and my team was safe. I knew the Admiral would be pleased and wouldn't begrudge a little more cleanup time. I told the asshole to get to his knees. He knelt up on the floor, facing away from me. I think they read their own scripts too often out here, that they can do whatever they want and get their money to buy them out in court. Or that I was too noble to shoot him in the back. But in a way, he was right. I took his right hand in my left and pulled it down behind him, as if to cuff him. Then drew my knife across his throat from left to right and pushed him forward. I could hear the gurgle as the blood pumped out, but it didn't last long. I'd cut enough throats, human and animal, in the Middle East to know he wasn't getting up from this one. Somehow, though, I felt I had let him off easy. I dragged the boy toy off the bed and smeared his right hand in the blood, then wrapped it around the knife. I almost felt bad for a few seconds using him like this, but hell. He was a pretty boy and liked taking it up the ass, so prison might be good for him. I still couldn't reconcile my head around the giggling. I mean, what type of man giggles? I vacated the apartment and used a burner phone to call it in to the locals. The setup looked a little too pat, but I could get someone to drop some hints that it would be best not to dig in too deeply. I was sitting with her in the hospital 2 days later. Then the breaking news came on. It appears that 90s action film star Brad Jones and his wife had been killed when their Cadillac Escalade ran off the road and exploded in flames. Both of them were burnt to death in the resulting fire. Drugs and alcohol were suspected as contributing factors. I hope they were now roasting in hell. As I was sitting there, holding her hand, her eyes flickered. Then they opened, and they were still the most beautiful shade of cornflower blue I had ever seen. I smiled at her